Next deputation is a deputation by Jean Balfour and Dr. Kerstin Kelly regarding the Rural Zoning Bylaw Consolidation Project. You have 5 minutes.
I would like to respectfully request 7 minutes if I can get it up front, just because I think I'll need it to be able to complete this properly.
Take your 5 and we'll see what happens.
Okay. So I want to thank you all for hearing our objection to the final draft of the Rural Zoning Bylaw, which I'm going to refer to as the final draft, which was released in July. Kerstin and I are here representing other concerned citizens who are worried about this document as well, so that's why there's 2 of us up here. This deputation is a synopsis of a more comprehensive document that I submitted to the city clerk for city council to review, so you'll have it in your files. I will also make this available to any journalist or citizen who wants to have it. I'd like to share it with the public. The final draft, as you know, is 380 pages of details. It's described as consolidated, harmonized, and modernized version of 14 legacy rural zoning bylaws. The devil is in the details, and we're trying to understand the implications of those details. So our purpose for being here today is to defend and protect the property rights of property owners from the unintended consequences to which we believe the final draft will inflict on other people if there's not sufficient public oversight. So I have 2 objections that I want to address. I've got many more, but I'm just going to do 2 today. Property rights are not acknowledged in the final draft document. And the definition of person is questionable and is suspicious. Person, on page 33 of the document, you'll read it, it says a person is an individual, association, firm, partnership, corporation, trust, incorporated company, corporation is created under the Condominium Act, organization, trustee of agent, and the heirs, executors, and other legal representatives of a person to whom the context can be applied according to the law. Now, the Oxford Dictionary defines person as an individual human being, and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms also refers to individual humans. So I don't know why there's such a complex definition of person. The problem in my mind is that whenever there will be a zoning bylaw dispute, and it invokes common law and invokes constitutional rights, this definition will surely create confusion and legal complications and may even abridge the charter rights of the property owner. So that's one concern. Thank you. The other one was the individual property rights. And I want to make a point that everyone in this city, in fact, everyone in this country has individual property rights. And so it applies to all of us. The problem is that the final draft does not acknowledge or define these rights at all. If it becomes a rural zoning bylaw, all zoning authority and powers will reside with the city and virtually none with the property owners. The other concern is that zoning disputes, when they occur, must be settled through the processes that are controlled and executed by government institutions and departments, and that would include their institutional biases and their bureaucratic processes. So I have 3 recommendations. One is, of course, obviously, define person as an individual human being, and also create a second definition that will include, I would call it the legal representatives of a person, so another category of definition so that you can include all those other bodies you wanted to have. Pretty straightforward. It will reduce the risk of expensive complications in future zoning disputes. The second recommendation is to make individual property rights integral to all rural zoning practices in this city. The benefit will be that property owners will have a basis upon which to negotiate with the city regarding zoning. And the third is to pass, this is the most important one in my mind, to pass a rural zoning compendium of best practices rather than a bylaw that contains all kinds of autocratic rules, and they are autocratic. The benefit will be that the final draft contains much valuable legacy bylaw content which can be used to feed this compendium of best practices. It's an ideal starting point for citizens to negotiate with over zoning issues with the city. Yeah, and also I would see envision an idea of the city creating a new class of rural zoning consultant called the rural zoning advisors, with whom the city property owners can negotiate and interact. I use the word negotiation because it's common in the public sector to use negotiations. We all know the negotiations to take place between public sector labor unions and also city employees and all government employees. So I'm going to summarize some expected benefits, and these are benefits to the city and to you as councillors. One is you can begin to create a city of equals. So what it means is if you take a compendium of best practices for rural zoning, you combine that with the definition and respect for individual property rights, which you'll end up with is greater equality between the citizens and the state or the government, and you'll develop more trust and more mutual respect. So that'll benefit everybody. The second is to create a great reputation across Ontario. So imagine if you created this new compendium and you showed to everybody across the province that you are defending and protecting the constitutional property rights of all constituent property owners. That's a heck of a message. So if you back this with a city of equals formula with a progressive vision, which shows plans to shape our communities to a more democratic society in which authority and responsibility are shared by citizens and the city rather than one size kind of direction.
I'll get you to wrap up, please.
Okay, so I got just a minute here. So I want to summarize by the following statement. Canada has become, in my mind, an impenetrable hierarchy of government authorities that restrict our citizens' freedoms of informed choice. Canada can never be described as a civil society until our citizens' individual person and property rights are fully honored and respected by every level of government. And in this case, the individual property rights, when clearly and comprehensively defined within a compendium of best practices for rural zoning, it will be essential for a truly democratic relationship between the city and its property owners to exist. So the question I have to City Council is, will you guys take, or will you people take the step to build this mutual respect and trust between our citizens and itself by going forward with this compendium and not pass another bylaw? Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputy?
Thanks.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. Are you aware that WSIP was a consultant that's been working on this for 4 years? Are you aware of that?
I'm fully aware of that. Yes, I am.
When did you realize that? How long have you known that they've been working on this?
I knew about it about a month ago when I heard the first deputation here. That basically, I jumped into it, learned more about it, discovered that the document. I went into the website, discovered the document had been published in July. The final details of that document were not available till July. And of course, during the summer, not everybody's looking at Jumped In, so I wasn't aware of it. I don't look at it every day. And so when I finally became aware of it, I realized that it was August the 29th, and we were told that September the 1st was the last day to provide any feedback. So that wasn't much time for me, certainly. And then the city council granted us another 2 weeks when we asked for 2 months, and that wasn't enough time. So that's what I'm saying, that 380 pages of very complex details, charts, all kinds of other things. It's the implication of those details that none of us really understand. And even today we don't, because it's just, you've had 4 years to create this document and we got 2 weeks to evaluate it. I mean, it doesn't seem right at all.
Even now, the vast majority of residents don't know you're doing this. The vast majority. When I'm going around and speaking to people, going door to door, people have no clue that their zonings are being changed and being rewritten and redone, and that it will affect their futures.
What was your expectation? When do you think we should have known about the details of this?
I'm just asking the question because, like I said, I've been told the same thing, that it's been there for 4 years. I've only been a councillor for a year. So,
okay.
How long have you known about it?
How long have I known?
Yeah.
Since it come onto our agenda.
Oh, really? Okay. All right, so
So
you're in the same boat
that's
as the rest
telling
of us. Yeah.
And you're a councillor. You should know. You should have known like 4 years ago, like everybody else.
Well, no,
I've
he wasn't a
only been a
councillor.
councillor for a year.
Let's not debate this.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald.
Yeah,
Moving
thanks for
on,
your question.
Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your deputation. I have a question for you.
Sure.
So you don't want to have any bylaws. What if you have like bad actors who just want to do their own thing and have environmental degradation, like fill in wetlands, that sort of thing? If they're, how do you expect, what do you do in that scenario when people aren't being nice and working together to bring forward change in a democratic way? You still need laws because you're going to have bad actors who do bad things. I'm sorry. I mean, in a perfect world, absolutely, but you still have to have bylaws. So that's my question.
That's a perfect question. So that is a question, or is that just a statement on your part? Okay, so, well, that's what I'm about to answer for you, if you'll let me do it. If you take all the work that was done by WSP over the last 4 years, and you took 14 sets of bylaws, and they've been applied to our city property for decades and decades, generations, there's a lot of really valuable content in that. If you take that content and you feed it into a compendium of best practices, so don't call it a bylaw, call it a compendium of best practices. And if you have city officials, rather than being enforcement officers of a bylaw, what they now become is a service provider to city property owners. And they can meet, sit down, discuss, have a cup of coffee together and say, this is what I like to do with my property. What do you think? Let's look at the best practices. Let's see how it fits. Let's see how it might affect our local neighbors. Let's see how it might affect our, and they can come to an agreement that's respected. So it's, you talk about democracy, but it's not democracy to me when you provide all the authority to the city and give it no property rights allocation to the property owner to be able to have any discussion on a reasonable basis. And to tell me that we could go through it through arbitrary type processes, arbitration processes that are controlled by the government, that's not an option, because the government has a lot of built-in biases, and those biases are endemic to the way they think about things, and it does not provide the kind of respect to the citizen that we need to be able to talk and deal with these issues in a responsible and in a fair way. So that's my answer, unless you had a question for it.
Follow up?
Laws are brought in to protect property owners. So if somebody is not adhering to the way things should be, and you've got neighbors who have issues with the bad actor, what comes, how do you deal with that? You really haven't answered the question about, all right, well, let me
give you a real situation, a real example. So I moved into the city of Kawartha Lake 7 years ago. I had severed 2 acres of property. I got a building permit. I had a builder to build my place for me. Doug knows what I'm talking about because he was helping me at that time. So our Mayor Elmsley. And what happened then is that we got a building permit, and it was approved, and we cleared the land, and we started building our property. And in August, about 4 months later, after the roof was on and the walls were up and everything, there was a brand new building, what do you call it? People come on site, inspector, yeah, thank you. He came on site and he said, this is not a family home, this is a duplex. And he shut down my project cold. He sent everybody home that day. And I was without the building project going on for 3 months. Didn't even have a chance to talk to the inspector about it. No discussion. It was shut it down, and then I was told afterwards that it might take as long as 2 years to have this seen through city council. So meanwhile, I had a father-in-law who was dying of cancer who was supposed to move in by December. All that went to nothing. So here I had an overzealous city official who messed with our plans, cost me a lot of money, a lot of grief. And when you talk about bad actors occur within the public service as well. It's not on both. That's why I'm saying you would need to have shared responsibility, equal footing between the property owner and the city officials. If you don't have that, it's a one-size-fits-all, directive, autocratic process that leaves us very little room to be able to fight for our own rights.
In fairness, I think you should point out it did not take you 2 years.
I agree. But what happened is it's because you and Mayor Latham went to the building department director and negotiated on my behalf, and we came up with a roundabout decision that made me sign an agreement that said that my property is now a duplex. It was never designed to be a duplex, but that was so I could not have been able to sell my house as a single-family dwelling at all, or put a mortgage on it, because the city would not have allowed that to happen as long as it wasn't following the bylaws or the building code. That's what I mean by having no recourse. And I suffered it personally, and that's the reason why I'm here today.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Balfour, Dr. Kelly, thanks for coming. I know back in August when we got the extension, and I know I would have liked to have seen 2 months, but we got, I believe it was Councillor Warren actually seconded the motion, and we all agreed. At least we got 15 days. Half a month is not the best, but it's better than nothing. But you know, I do agree that we need to get this right, and there's things in here that aren't maybe 100%. I know when this first thing started, I was at the very first meeting in May of 2019 and at St. Luke's School in Downeyville. That was the very first meeting. I think Director Holly would attest to that. That's where we all started it. But then, of course, things happened. Things were shut down for 2 years, basically, and a lot of the rural people and the part-time residents never really did get. You know, some of them are never got informed enough. You know, you can't lay the blame all on them, but to be fair, you know, we didn't really advertise it that much, but we all want to get this project done, but, you know, I think it's imperative that we get done, but we have to do it right. And, you know, I don't want to be mired down in appeals for years. And as you pointed out, these are government appointed agencies that, you know, may take a while to get your appeal through. But just a quick question. You mentioned about property rights, and I think that's important, but we live in a constitutional monarchy, not a constitutional republic, so sometimes a constitutional monarchy, like, it could be kind of a little different as far as property rights go. Like, in your opinion, can we sort of entrench this? Can this document be more individual oriented for your individual rights? What would you propose that we do to change it, to make it more friendly for the individual to entrench their rights, especially property rights?
Thanks very much for the question, and it's a good question. The larger document that I've sent to you is about 8 or 9 pages long, which is why I couldn't have presented this in the 5 minutes. In that, it makes reference to constitutional law, but also common law. Common law has been practiced in this country since the day it was created, and it goes back to generations. And where we see property issues being handled, it's being handled not in a constitutional document, but it's being handled under common law. There are some references to property rights in federal statutes, but they're more vague than specific. It's where you find the answers is within common law. Now, that's part of the problem, is that if you go back to the 1982, when they developed the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, so there was a battle between the premiers at the time and Trudeau Sr., who was Prime Minister. And at that time, some of the premiers wanted to include property rights in the document, in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But Trudeau and some others refused to let that happen because they were afraid it would open a bag of snakes. So they never did it, and that's the one failing of the Constitution that we have, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that it does not enshrine property rights. But that doesn't stop this City Council from looking into how to properly define, and I'm happy to work with you on this because I had a strong background as a libertarian studying these topics. So I'm happy to participate in these discussions, but there is a way to define property rights and make it clearly defined so that every citizen who is being subject to these documents will understand what their rights are. And so when they go and negotiate, let's call it, with the city representatives on zoning, they'll know where they can, where the room is that they can put their arguments. That's important, and very important for democracy. If we don't do this, then we're not giving those kinds of powers to the city, to the people itself, as the powers are becoming too heavily weighted in favor of government institutions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a motion to receive the deputation on the rural zoning bylaw consolidation project and the supporting correspondence, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting. Councillor Perry, Councillor Joyce.
Thank you.
All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you very much.